Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Watch my video and subscribe my channel. Taylor refuses to give up Ridge to Brooke, and Will is rattled by Luna's next move. Ridge tells Taylor at the Forrester guest house that he is sorry, but he cannot marry her. Taylor accurately guesses that, as always, he has realized he wants to spend his life with Brooke. In the main office of Forrester Creations, Thomas boldly declares that Brooke is Ridge's past. She needs to back off. In case she had forgotten since their previous conversation, Thomas describes how much his family has suffered as a result of Brooke's intervention. He's sure she thought she could woo her way back into his father's embrace, but she failed and his mother triumphed. For good this time. Brooke tells poor, misguided Thomas that he simply does not comprehend. Ridge believed he had lost her forever after they shared a magical moment in Italy. Unimpressed, Thomas shrugs and says his father is a fine man, but he's marrying Taylor. She will become his wife. He is certain they are deciding on a wedding date as they speak. More. Catherine Kelly Lang's new hairstyle. Will Taylor change Ridge's mind? Taylor masochistically informs Ridge that she will not let him go without a struggle, blaming Brooke and Eric rather than the guy himself. She begs him not to let them tear them apart again. Taylor can't believe Ridge would accept her proposal and then cancel it because of Brooke. She exclaims, "No. I will not let you do that, Ridge." Ridge, Taylor bed, and breakfast. Ridge's reassurances fail to calm Taylor, who believes Brooke is toxic and will disappoint him again. Taylor wipes away tears and says she will not be his life, raft between shipwrecks with Brooke. This is their period, as well as that of Thomas and Steffi. I will not let you abandon us again. Not for Brooke. More. Thomas's return storyline sparks anger. Will Katie talk to Will down? In Forrester's design studio, Will tells his mother that it's difficult to keep a secret from Electra. When he thinks about the mystery female he slept with, he wants to confess. Katie huffs that this young woman should accept responsibility for what she did. Will mistook the person for Electra because of her mask. Katie will crew B and B. Katie is pleased Will can tell her about his sex life, which is not strange at all, and they discuss how he believed it was Electra for the 100th time. He wants to tell his lover the truth, but she may be unhappy, an understatement. Will wonders if he is a true man if he doesn't reveal the truth. Katie, in a cringeworthy moment of foreshadowing, proposes he let that night stay in his past, as nothing will come of it. Or will it? Can Lee convince Luna to stop obsessing? At Lee's house, she discovers Luna daydreaming and rightly believes she is thinking about Will Spencer. Luna irritates her aunt/grandmother by implying she could have a future with Bill's son. Lee's eyes roll to the heavens as she informs Luna that he is off limits and will have no part of her in any way. She needs to control her destructive instincts. More, a new love interest for Taylor. Luna is pleased that Lee cares. Does this mean you love me? She asks. Lee avoids becoming too emotional, but she does tell Luna that she is family and that Poppy has let her down. What she does now will determine whether or not she is a part of Finn's life in the future. Luna, as determined as ever, suggests that things with Will may yet go her way. Lee seeks an explanation, but none is given. Lee B&B. More, B&B fall preview. Lee announces that Luna will take up 2 jobs to prove to everyone that she is not like her dysfunctional mother. Suddenly, she needs to go out again, very busy for someone on leave, leaving Luna to talk to herself. If I become a Spencer, I won't have to work, Grandma. Luna opens a drawer and looks at the pregnancy test box, hoping for the best, before flashing back to rape Will. Luna walks across her obviously disheveled room, pulls out Electra's discarded mask, takes a picture and texts it to him. More. Why was Luna's test negative? Will is terrified in the design studio by the wording on the mask that reads, "Our secret." Back at Lee's, Luna cradles the pregnancy test kit with a scary grin. In the Forrester guest house, the tension was thick enough to slice with a designer razor blade, the kind Ridge Forrester himself might use, while sketching another timeless creation that masked the chaos of his heart. For there he stood, shoulders slumped, voice weighted with the gravel of regret, telling Taylor Hayes that he was sorry, but he could not marry her, that the years of circling each other like planets caught in gravitational pull had finally led him back, predictably, painfully, to Brooke Logan, the woman who had haunted every decision, every betrayal, every reunion and rupture like the scent of a familiar perfume lingering on a pillow, and Taylor, though her breath caught and her spine stiffened in a defiant arch, already knew, for hadn't she guessed it from the moment his eyes flickered toward that memory of Italy, that magical moment where the Mediterranean sun kissed Brooke's hair and ridge, believing he had lost her forever, found his soul lurching like a man, slipping into the sea only to find the lifeline he thought was gone. And now here they were, the proposal still warm, the promise barely sealed, unraveling not because of destiny but because of a Logan and Thomas Forrester, their son, in the main office at Forrester Creations, was even now spitting declarations like darts tipped in loyalty and self-delusion, proclaiming with that peculiar mix of arrogance and wounded child longing that Brooke was Ridge's past, that she needed to back off, that his mother had finally won, for good this time, he said, as if history were not a snake, that shed skins but never changed its slither, and Brooke, standing poised with her chin high, informed him that he simply did not understand, that in Italy, Ridge had looked at her with the eyes of a man who had tasted loss and found redemption, that their moment was not a trick nor a seduction, but a recognition of something enduring, and Thomas, unimpressed, shrugged the way only a son who has lived in the shadow of his parents' cyclical love war can shrug, insisting his father was a good man. But he was marrying Taylor, and even now they were choosing wedding dates like one might choose fabric swatches, believing the cut was already determined. But at that very moment Taylor, in that guest house that had seemed too many tears pressed into its upholstery, was refusing to relinquish him, clinging like ivy on a crumbling wall, imploring Ridge not to let Brooke and Eric pull them apart, blaming everyone but the man in front of her, for that is Taylor's particular tragedy, to see conspiracies where there is only the human frailty of a man who cannot choose and stay chosen, and she ranted, "No, I won't let you do that, Ridge," her voice cracking like porcelain under heat, while Ridge offered grunted reassurances, the sort of half-hearted, guttural noises men make when their minds have already left the room. But Taylor grew more agitated, more unhinged, swiping at tears, insisting Brooke was toxic, that she would disappoint him again, declaring she would not be his life raft between shipwrecks. This was their time, Thomas and Steffi's time, their family's reclamation, and she, Taylor Hayes, would not watch it burn again, and elsewhere in the design office, a very different storm brewed, as will Spencer, Bill's youngest, earnest in his altruism and nodded with guilt, confessed to Katie that it was tough keeping a secret from Electra, that the mask that night, that mistake with a mystery girl weighed on him like a stone sewn into his conscience, and Katie, equal parts mother and strategist, huffed that the woman needed to take responsibility, telling her son, for the umpteenth time, that what happened was a trick, a deception, that he thought it was Electra, but it was not. And when he asked if he should tell his girlfriend the truth, Katie, in what would one day be called a moment of foreshadowing so on the nose it practically drew blood, said perhaps he should let that night stay buried, for nothing would come of it. Oh, but something would, for elsewhere, in a too bright apartment filled with the hum of resentment and obsession, Lee Finnegan found Luna Nozoa daydreaming, her gaze glazed with dangerous hope, and guessed correctly that she was thinking about Will Spencer, and Lee, eyes like polished obsidian, rolled them to the ceiling as she warned Luna again that he was off limits, that no Spencer blood would mingle with her schemes, that she must rein in her destructive impulses if she ever wished to be part of Finn's life. And Luna, chuffed in her own twisted way, asked if this was Lee's way of saying she loved her, and Lee, stopping, just short of tenderness, admitted only that Luna was family, that Poppy had shortchanged her, that redemption was possible, but only if she obeyed, and Luna, with that leer that could chill silk, murmured that things with Will might still go her way, And Lee, summoned by yet another errand, left, and the room was thick with the residue of unspoken plans as Luna, alone, spoke to herself. "If I become a Spencer, I won't have to work, Grandma." And from a drawer she pulled a pregnancy test kit, fingers fondling it with a terrifying grin, flashing back to that night of violation, pulling out Electra's discarded mask, snapping a picture and texting it to Will with the words, "Our secret." And in the design office, Will stared at his phone, rattled as though a ghost had breathed on him. While back at Lee's, Luna cradled her wicked trophy, the kit of promise, the mask a weapon, and the air between them all, the Forresters, the Spencers, the Logans, tightened like a noose woven from silk, lies, and the eternal refrain, Brooke or Taylor, past or future, truth or survival, and none of them knowing that this was only the beginning, that the moment Ridge chose or failed to choose would ripple outward until even the innocent like Will and the guilty like Luna would find themselves dragged into the undertow of a family war-dressed in couture but dripping in blood. And so the storm gathered force, the guest house becoming less a sanctuary and more a pressure cooker where Taylor's tears steamed into anger and Ridge's silence curdled into guilt. For each second he failed to leave was another second she mistook hesitation for hope, and as her fingers clutched his forearm, nails like accusations biting into his skin, she whispered with a tremor that shook the old floorboards, "I will not lose you to Brooke again, not after everything, not after the promises we made when the children were small, when the world was simpler, when I believed you were the one man who could look at me and not see a replacement for her." And Ridge, his mind replaying that moment in Italy like a reel he wished would snap, muttered something about destiny, about how they always find their way back, but his words were as hollow as the space between them. And meanwhile, in the main office of Forrester Creations, Thomas was pacing like a predator, telling Brooke yet again how much his family had suffered because of her, how she seduces and destroys, how she is the storm that always comes, and Brooke, trying to remain composed though her fingers trembled slightly on the sketch pad she held as a prop, said softly that he did not know the whole truth, that his father's heart had spoken, that love like theirs does not die, it only waits, and Thomas scoffed, for he had heard those words before, from her lips, from his father's, from every iteration of this eternal triangle, and each time it ended with his mother in tears and his family in pieces, and somewhere in the dim corridors of that sprawling fashion empire, Katie Logan was telling her son to forget, to bury, to pretend, while Will's conscience gnawed like a rat behind his ribs, and he asked again, "What kind of man am I if I lie?" And Katie, her voice softening in that dangerous Logan way, told him he was a good man, that good. Men protect what they love, even if it means silence, even if it means swallowing the poison of another's crime. And at Lee's condominium, Luna was unraveling her own tapestry of poison, the pregnancy test box like a relic of power in her palm, the mask like a relic of shame she turned into a weapon. And as she traced the fabric with her thumb, she thought of Will's confused eyes, of how easily he could be steered if fear became his compass, and she smiled, a slow, creeping thing that did not reach her eyes, as she whispered to herself that this was not over, that Lee could lecture, Poppy could vanish, Electra could cry, but in the end, the Spencers were a kingdom, and she had found the gate, and if it meant bending truth, breaking lives, or birthing a lion to flesh, so be it, for had she not been shortchanged all her life, told to wait, to work, to prove herself, and now, here was a chance to skip the proving and go straight to the throne, and Lee, returning later that evening with the scent of antiseptic still clinging to her coat, found Luna humming tunelessly, and for a moment she thought she saw something dangerous in the girl's eyes, a glint like a scalpel left too long in the dark. But she said nothing, only reminded her of the job she was to apply for, the paper she was to sign, the image she was to curate, because in Lee's world, image was everything, and miles away, in the Forrester guest house, Ridge finally pulled free, said he needed air, and Taylor left with the echo of his boots on the stairs, pressed her palms to her face and sobbed, not just for the man she was losing, but for the years she had wasted believing he would change. And yet, even in her grief, a seed of rage sprouted, For she would not go quietly this time. No, she would call Steffi, she would call Thomas, she would remind them of the Logan curse. And if Brooke thought Italy would be the last act of this drama, she had underestimated the woman who had crossed continents for love, buried sons for love, lost herself for love, and in the design office, Will stared at the text from Luna again. The words are secret, glowing like a threat beneath the mask's hollow eyes, and his pulse quickened, for he remembered that night too vividly now. The smell of the room, the feel of the mask, the confusion, the betrayal, and he whispered to himself, "Who are you?" Night fell over Los Angeles like a sea. Artane pulled too hastily, leaving threads exposed and seams straining. And in the guest house, Taylor Hayes sat with the remnants of her pride like shards in her lap, staring at the door ridge had closed behind him, hearing again his words, soft, apologetic, but decisive, as though they were chiseled into the grain of the walls, and she thought of every moment she had stood by him, every night she had sacrificed her own desires for the sake of his comfort, every time she had believed the version of him who looked at her as though she were the only woman in the room, only to learn, time and again, that there was always another room, another woman, and this time it was Brooke, always Brooke, and that thought became a pulse of heat behind her eyes, a heat that fed her refusal, her vow that she would not let this end like all the others. For this time she had Steffi on her side, Thomas on her side, a family that had finally rallied, and she would not see it shattered by a Logan's perfume. And a memory of Italy, no. She would find a way to make him remember his duty, his promise, and perhaps even his fear of the chaos Brooke brought. While in the main office, Thomas sent another message to Steffi, his text sharp as nails. "Mom needs us. Don't let Brooke get back in. Ridge has to be reminded who we are, and Steffi across town." Read it with a scowl, torn between her own battles. Finn's distractions, Sheila's shadow, the endless tug-of-war between loyalty and self-preservation, and the creeping realization that her mother's desperation might be turning dangerous. But the real danger, the one no Forrester yet fully saw, was brewing in Lee Finnegan's apartment, where Luna had set the pregnancy kit on the table like a talisman, staring at it as though the little plastic wand might become a key to the life she craved, and her fingers hovered over her phone again, debating another message to Will, something more explicit, something that would turn his guilt into compliance. But she held back because anticipation was a stronger leash than fear alone. And in the design office Will paced, the glow of the screen burning in his palm, the mask's image searing into his conscience. And Katie returned with 2 cups of coffee, watching her son with that blend of maternal worry and political calculation that only a Logan could wear, saying softly, "It's just a mask, honey. Just a mistake. Don't let her win by dragging you into her mess." But Will shook his head, whispering that he didn't even know who her was, that the girl was a phantom, a thief of his trust, and he wanted to tell Electra, to be clean, to be free. But Katie's hand on his shoulder was heavy with the weight of family secrets she had kept in her own youth, and she murmured that sometimes telling the truth doesn't set you free. It only builds another cage. And far away, Ridge found himself on the Forrester jetty, staring at the water, thinking of Italy, thinking of Brooke's laughter, thinking of Taylor's tears, and wondering for the 1,000th time why his life was a series of circles drawn in sand, why every road led to the same crossroad, loyalty or passion, history or heat. And as he stared, he heard the faint echo of Thomas's voice from earlier, telling Brooke to back off. And he wondered when his children had become the keepers of his heart, when their opinions became chains instead of guidance. And he thought, though he would not say it aloud, that maybe, just maybe, the reason he always returned to Brooke was because with her, the decision was his, not theirs, and meanwhile, Lee slipped out again, muttering something about errands, leaving Luna alone with her grin and her growing obsession. And in that silence, she whispered to herself, "If I carry his child, he can never leave me." And the words hung in the air like smoke that refused to dissipate, and the city beyond the glass twinkled, unaware that in its gleaming heart, a girl with a mask and a lie was about to carve a future in someone else's name. Morning came harsh and uninvited, spilling through the Forrester guest house curtains like an interrogator's lamp, and Taylor Hayes, eyes swollen from a night of sleepless calculation, sat rigid at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, scrolling. Messages she had sent in a haze. One to Steffi, one to Thomas, one unsent to Ridge that simply read, "You owe me more than silence." And as she rose, the woman who once prided herself on poise felt the crackle of something wilder.